What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Canadian Football Fanatic YouTube channel, and thank you guys for tuning in to another BC Lions post-game report. What a absolute letdown, the Lions fall apart in the final 4 minutes of the game, resulting in the 37-33 loss. As you can see below the Hamilton Tiger Cats, BC looked to have things in the bag. As I mentioned, going into the final 4 minutes of the game, with the 33-23 lead, and they end up falling 37-33 to the Hamilton Tiger Cats. And now below 500 by 2 games now with a 3-5 record after this one. We have some stuff to chat about. I definitely have some opinions to get off my chest. But before we do, of course, folks, all the reminders and whatnot before we get into the post-game report here tonight. I see people are tuning in right now on the YouTube channel, so I appreciate you guys for tuning in first and foremost. If you guys could be sure to like the video if you guys are tuning in on YouTube, though. Comment down below if you guys are tuning in. Let us know how you guys are feeling after that one. I would imagine if you guys are Lions fans, you're not too happy after that one. But with the post-game report, that hopefully comes a little bit of silver lining, although I don't know how many silver linings you're going to be able to find out of this one, especially in the fashion that the BC Lions lost. There was some positives I feel like to maybe chat about it with the victory, and I know things changed so quickly, and it's maybe a little bit of a contradicting myself a little bit, but just it feels like this is kind of who the Lions are this year, unfortunately, that they take one step forward, 2 steps forward, and it's 2 or 3 steps backwards, right? Every time they look good, they put a game together, they put 2 games together, they end up putting a stretch together like they have been, right? And you're minutes away from knocking off the before this game, the 4-win streak. Hamilton Tiger Cats now extending it to five straight wins. You look to knock off the hottest team in the CFL, and in a snap of a finger, things change just like that. And as I mentioned, I think it's because the fashion of which it changed. And as I said, we'll talk about that in a little bit, as I got a little bit off track there. But as I mentioned, comment down below. Let us know how you guys are feeling. Most importantly, subscribe to the channel. Our subscribing count has continued to grow and climb as we have started to change a little bit of our content here on the channel. And I appreciate everybody for subscribing. But if you guys are tuning in on the channel right now, please subscribe to the channel. It'd be greatly appreciated. When you guys subscribe, press the notification bell. You guys get notified every single time we go live or upload any sort of content to the channel, as we have been busy with our collaboration and partnership with the BC Football Conference. And with that, folks, a little bit of an update for you guys for our absence last week. We do apologize for the post-game report, as I did give a little bit of update on our social platforms for you guys that we wouldn't be having a post-game, a preview as well as a post-game report last week. The post-game report was due to me being at a wedding Saturday evening, so was unable to really take in the second half and be available for a post-game report. The preview not being a thing. I believe we're going to start to officially shift things with, unfortunately, Blake's schedule just not being able to work out this year, and him really not being able to make many shows this year. I believe as of now, we're going to scrap the preview for the remainder of the season, although we'll see how things get when the BC Football Conference season ends. But with that, as I mentioned, with our collaboration with the British Columbia Football Conference, it is a compensated, I guess, partnership is probably the best way to word it, and having to spend my time there, right, with as I mentioned, being compensated with content throughout the week and whatnot, and having to just be as prepared as possible for the upcoming games and whatnot, having to probably take a little bit of a step back in our BC Lions coverage. So as I mentioned, that being said, the previews for the rest of the season up until, I guess, the end of the BCFC season ends will be no more as of now. But don't fear, folks. You guys can still find some BC Lions content here on a weekly basis, as we are going to keep up the post-game report. I'm going to still be coming to you guys after every BC Lions game, giving you guys our thoughts, giving you guys my thoughts, I guess I should say, as Blake isn't here again. I know he's going to hope to try to make it towards the end of the show. We'll see how things work out timing-wise. But with that, I have also picked up the responsibilities of color analyst for the Vancouver Island Raiders this season in the BCFC. So there will be a few nights that those games do intertwine on the same Saturdays as well. So if they are home dates for the Vancouver Island Raiders, I'm going to have to, push post-game responsibilities to probably, the next day type of thing where they're not live like this. But we will still upload some sort of, content, our feelings, post-game report style, as always. So just a little bit of update for you guys, as we will be pretty busy. Still on the Fanatics channel we're going to be breaking up, still working out the details, unfortunately, with the conference of what they want on a weekly basis. But as of now, we're doing the Inside the BCFC weekly video, weekly show, whatever you want to call it. And as of now, it's an hour-long show, which I think I agreed upon. We kind of want to maybe cut things down into 2 30-minute shows where we're joined by a guest for 30-minute show, and then we're recapping, preview things for another 30-minute show. So stay tuned for that additional information. But as of now, we are doing that on the channel. So you guys can find the first 2 episodes of Inside the BCFC on the Fanatics channel right now, as well as we're hoping to do some other, behind-the-scenes content, as well as some Instagram content as well. So if you guys aren't following us on our social media platforms, as I mentioned, for all of our updates as well, you can find those on Twitter @_CF Fanatics over there, and you can find a bunch of our other content as well at Canadian Football Fanatics on Instagram, as we are continuing to grow quite well over there. That is our highest followed platform, I guess you could say, with just under 3.4 thousand followers over there. So appreciate you guys for all the support. It has been nice, and it has been noticeable the last, I would say, 6 weeks or so, of you guys paying attention to all the BCFC stuff. And as I mentioned, being in the province here, support the local football that is in our community, as we did just wrap up week number 2, as I believe actually it's maybe not just wrapped up, but it should be close to finishing down in Langford there. The West Shore Rebels looking to get a handily substantial victory, I guess you should say, over the Valley Huskers. So let's get into the BC Lions, folks. That was, a lot of thoughts after that one. As I mentioned, it's the bed that you make, the bed you have to lie in with a result like this, right? Where this post-game report would have been, I feel like, much different if the Lions were able to hold out, even just squeak out a victory, right? If it was a 33-30 victory, I think this thing goes much differently. And even with the same narrative, I think, where I had coming into, I mentioned on the weekly show this week with the fellows, Shane, Coach, and Blake, of, I'm picking the Lions this week, I think, with my heart a little bit in our weekly picks, and I was unfortunately proven wrong on that. I did mention before that I think this is kind of who the Lions team is this year, as I already did mention it earlier in the show, though, referring back to what I already said, of like, I think this Lions team is just, they take 1 or 2 steps forward, they take 3 or 4 steps back. That is just who they're going to be. It's the roster, it's the players. Heck, it might even be the coaches. We'll talk about Mike Benavides here in a little bit. I'm sure for sure we'll talk about Mike Benavides in a little bit. And I don't even know if I want to start with the positive. I feel like we kind of maybe start with the end of game situation. We work our way back a little bit here with how things went, and it'll be a little bit of a unique post-game report, as we are going to, in losses, right? We always talk about they are a little bit therapeutic, and we always tend to bounce off. We start to go here, we there. A lot of, going down different rabbit holes, if you will, and thought processes. I don't even know where to start, but I think we have to start defensively, right? Because as I mentioned, it would have been a whole completely different conversation. We could have been starting with the offense and the positivity they were able to have there, which actually is what we're going to do. We're going to try to take this as organized as possible tonight, guys. We're gonna start from start to finish. We're going to start with the BC Lions, starting with the football. And although it started, or I guess I should say, although it finished positively, it did not start positively, I guess I should say. And although it was the Lions, starting with the football, as I mentioned, their first quarter issues have been well criticized and made public. I believe it was 43, or if it was, I couldn't remember if it was minus 43 or minus 48 point differential going into last week. They mentioned on the broadcast in the fourth quarter, by far worse in the CFL. Excuse me. And they start out looking like the same old BC Lions. They pick up a first down via a Keon Hatcher catch and falling forward for the first down, and then they're unable to pick up a first down from there. They end up punting 2 plays later, and I believe their very first play, Hamilton. Speaking of Hamilton's very first play offensively, I believe it was Robert Carter who was able to force the fumble. I believe we had 2 forced fumbles that I'm trying to refer to who forced them. But that being said, Blaylock was the one who's new into the lineup, starting in place for Jalen Edwards Cooper to recover the fumble early on for the BC Lions, generate some early momentum. The BC Lions were able to recover that football. 4 plays later, James Butler was able to punch it in for his first touchdown of the first quarter. And either their second, or if I'm not mistaken, it could have been their first. If I'm not mistaken, it was their second first quarter touchdown of the season. But the BC Lions have just, for whatever reason, been, I don't even want to say snake bitten, unlucky. That's not the reason. It's just been, honestly, a lack of execution. Poor execution is maybe the best way to put it on behalf of the BC Lions offense in the first quarter. And ultimately, they were able to score once again. I believe Hamilton was able to kick a field goal, make it 7-3. The BC Lions were able to take over possession of the football once again, drive down the field, and punch it in for their second touchdown of the first quarter this game. Incredible that they mentioned on the broadcast that the BC Lions coming into today's game had scored a grand total of 14 points in 7 football games in the first quarter. Prior to coming to this game, they scored 14 points, matching their season total in this one to start things off. Jump out to the 14-3 lead over the Hamilton Tiger Cats, looking strong, looking great, looking like the Lions were going to, be able to start fast and be able to, for the most part, they had put together, pretty good second halves, pretty good second quarters for the most part. And what looked like they were going to be able to maybe continue to build on their strong start, continue to maybe capitalize, generate momentum, especially playing at home. And things somewhat fizzled out from there. As I mentioned, the 14 points tying the total the Lions put up in the in the first quarter all season was a very big positive. The 14-3 lead after the first quarter was another big positive. But they end up going in the second quarter, driving with possession of the football, looking to potentially go up 20-3, possibly. And unfortunately, James Butler, I tweeted it throughout the game. You guys can go back and follow me on my personal platform on Twitter, just at simply Cole McGarvey. James Butler has been playing fantastic. He is, in my opinion, playing like the best running back in the CFL so far this season. He needs to hang on the ball. That is his lone downfall this season, that, he can run between the tackles. He can run outside the tackles. He can break tackles. He can make a man miss in the hole. He can catch the ball coming out of the backfield. His lone downfall this year has been holding onto the ball and turning over the football this year, unfortunately. And we saw it once again. Devin Beresek, Canadian linebacker for the Hamilton Tiger Cats, who has been making, making pretty good strides throughout his rookie campaign as a starter. For the Ticats, he ends up making the play, stripping the ball. The Ticats are able to recover, take it down into the Lions territory. They end up getting close to the goal line. Jake Dolegala ends up coming in to punch it in to make it 14-10. And from that point, it kind of just almost stymied the offense. It just almost took them right out of rhythm from that point on. The Lions, 14 points at that time, end up scoring, what is it, 19 points from in the remainder of 3 quarters. A fair amount, but I think the way that things were clicking in the fourth quarter, this could have been, 40, 45 points easily for the offense, I think. And just from that point on, it almost took them right out of rhythm, right out of gear almost, in a sense. And, they were able to get back in rhythm to end the half. I know the big Keon Hatcher play, I believe it was 73-yarder right down the seam to Keon Hatcher. Or Keon we gotta find a way to crib that, buddy. I know I'm smiling a little bit of maybe some happy points here to chat about tonight. Some a little bit of positivity. Um, we gotta crib that one, Keon, for sure. I think that even generates more momentum, but obviously that wasn't enough, regardless, because the Lions were able to score in that possession, although it was 4 points less with the field goal and Sean White. But from that point on, as I mentioned, it just felt like the Lions' offense was just completely out of the rhythm from that point on. And although when looking at Nathan Rourke's numbers here, we'll pull them up here in a second. Give me a second here, folks. Um, Not another bad, another. When you look at the numbers, not a bad outing, but Nathan will say it himself. I think even watching the game, left some throws out there for sure, just under 300 yards, so 20 or 27, 289, but no touchdown passes, no interceptions. As I mentioned, the offense basically from that point on unable to score a touchdown, and Sean White was basically bailing them out, and the difference in the ball game in the second half, right? The BC Lions kicked field goals, and the Hamilton Tiger Cats were able to execute and get it into the end zone. But as I mentioned, the Keon Hatcher play to take them into field goal range should have been a touchdown instead of the 3 points. Puts the BC Lions up 17-10. From that point, a play that was talked about at nauseum, and rightfully so, because I 100% agree with Milt Stegall that not only one of the best plays in the CFL this season, that one of the best plays in football that you might see with Robert Carter Jr. and his interception, that if you're tuning in, you must have seen it. So I would love to hear people. I see that 7 people are tuning in on YouTube. Let us know how you guys are feeling in the comments section or in the chat. And let us know especially how you guys are feeling about that interception Robert Carter Jr. was able to pull off. The one-handed interception, fabulous play, fantastic play that no doubtly will be talked about. But unfortunately, the magnitude and I guess the importance of it, the timing of it, to generate that momentum going into the half, give the Lions back the ball. They end up going into the halftime with the 20-13 lead after Robert Carter Jr. picks it off. It's basically a whatever you want to call it, 10-point, 6-point swing that goes the Lions' benefit. That goes in the Lions' benefit with Robert Carter Jr. making the unbelievable interception with one hand in the end zone, wiping either 6 points off the board for Hamilton, or if that pass was incomplete, a 3-point field goal opportunity for them. And then the Lions, with that opportunity, were able to go down the field and score to end the first half to make it, as I said, 20-13. So a swing that went in the Lions' favor, and ultimately was probably the last. Maybe I shouldn't say the last positivity for the Lions, but felt good. It was a good feeling for the Lions, and I would imagine a lot of fans in attendance. As you guys can see, I'm not. I wasn't over in Vancouver today taking in the game, unfortunately, or fortunately. Unfortunately, fortunately, I guess you could say, with it being a Sunday evening and me being back to work tomorrow, I would probably still be at the stadium. Not probably, I would still be at the stadium, probably just getting ready to do this, and then hoping to catch the ferry in about hour or two's time, and not being home and for another 3 or 4 hours. So it'd be another long evening with a quick turnaround, getting back up for work in the morning. So I am glad, to be honest, I'm back home with being able to do the show from home, be able to enjoy a little bit of dinner afterwards, throw a little bit of load of laundry on, and then enjoy the rest of my Sunday evening as I close it out before the weekend is over and the Lions into a bye week. But as I mentioned, the Lions go into halftime with a lead, and at that point, things were looking good. As I said, feeling good as well. If you're the fan base, if you're in the locker room, right? Nathan Rourke at that time, 11 for 14, 175 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. James Butler, revenge games for James Butler, as he loves his revenge games against his former team, as Lions fans should be well aware that feeling after last season with JB being in the yellow and black with the Ticats last season when playing against the BC Lions. He had 9 carries for 80 yards and 2 touchdowns at the half. Let me just pull up the numbers here, actually. As I said, so Nathan at the half, 11 of 14, 175. He finished with 20 of 27 for 289. James Butler, 9 of 80 for 2 touchdowns. He finishes the game with 16 carries for 115 yards and 2 touchdowns as well. Strong effort. Maybe would have liked to see a little bit more James Butler. Unfortunately, probably due to just circumstances late in the game, having to put the ball in the air there at the end probably takes things out of James Butler's hands a little bit more. And even on that possession, and we'll talk about it here in a little bit, where the Lions thought they had a free play. Nathan Rourke said after the game to Farhan Lalji that he thought that the Hamilton Tiger-Cats jumped. Like I said, we'll talk about that in a little bit. I think it kind of took the ball out of James Butler's hands. Unfortunately, Keon Hatcher at the half, 5 for 117. He finishes the game for 5 for 117, taken out of the game completely in the second half, and pretty much the rest of the receiving corps from that point on. I know Ian Neighbart had a few plays throughout the game, was able to be a contributor, but Justin McInnes kind of continues to be quiet, and his chemistry with Nathan Rourke early on was showing, solid. Was I think, solid is probably the best way to put it, right? There was some more, I think, to be had, although McInnes was up near, I want to say top 5 numbers receiving yards wise through the first 5 games or so. Now in week 8, I'd be curious to see where he lands in there, as he's been very quiet now with a 2 reception for 23-yard game. I would be curious to know if he even has 100 yards in the last month of the season, to be completely honest, after starting the season pretty pretty well, especially considering 2 of those games were with Jeremiah Masoli at the helm. So that's going to be one to figure out for sure. And the Lions, as I said, this conversation is completely different, right? In a victory, right? Where probably are talking more so about the positivity of Keon Hatcher, and he continues to look like Keon Hatcher that we saw in 2022, a number 1 wide receiver, bona fide number 1 wide receiver in the CFL, who continues to put up numbers right up there with Kenny Lawler, maybe not in touchdowns, but in receptions, yards, effectiveness, and importance to his team. And I think Keon Hatcher is going to continue to put up numbers. As I joked about, Keon, we got to find a way to crib that, buddy. That 73-yarder should have been about a 83, 90-yarder for a tud on the game for sure. But as I said, from that point on, Keon Hatcher shut out the rest of the half. Let me see here. When talking about, I guess, the second half, the Ticats go out and drive right down the field for the touchdown, starting with possession in the third quarter. The Lions, as I said, the fumble really kind of took them out of gear after the big play to Keon Hatcher. Looks fantastic, 73 yards there to add to the numbers. Things were not as smooth as it was in the first quarter, specifically for the Lions from here on out. Sean White, Mr. Automatic, I believe, goes 4 for 4 on the game, making his consecutive field goals made streak up to 30, if I'm not mistaken. I believe is what I heard on the broadcast. Let me see. Sean White, Mr. Automatic, 4 for 4, along of 45 for one Whitey. And Blake, if you are listening to this afterwards, or if you're driving home and listening to this, buddy, first of all, hands on the wheel. Watch that car. Where's the Sean White jersey, bud? Number 1, we got to get Bakes on that to get that in, because he has been maybe to be expected, not maybe to be expected. The most consistent thing about the Lions this year is Mr. Automatic and Sean White. Whenever he trots out there, the ball is going through the uprights. So we got to get that jersey. I'd love to see it. We'd love to see it on Wednesday night, as we are going to do the weekly show once again. Talk about this one, as hopefully I don't have to say too much as we get all my thoughts out here tonight. So about 25 minutes in, folks. I see the numbers are fluctuating on YouTube, so we appreciate you guys first and foremost for tuning in. If you guys are tuning in and you guys haven't though, please be sure to like the video down below, comment down below, let us know how you guys are feeling. If you guys are tuning in live, you guys can chime in on the chat, let us know where you guys are tuning in from, how you guys are feeling, and of course, subscribing to the channel. When you guys subscribe, press the notification bell, you guys get notified every single time we go live, like tonight for the post-game report, or we upload any sort of content like Inside the BCFC, any order content, any other content, excuse me, throughout the season, as we are basically about to get into the thick of things here in the dog days, for some people like myself, where it's going to be it's going to be like drinking out of a fire hydrant, where I'm just going to try to get to the light at the end of the tunnel, which is the Canadian Bowl and is the Grey Cup. Although when it is off season and I miss football, these are the times that I do miss. So as I mentioned, subscribe to the channel. It'd be greatly appreciated as we continue to climb towards 500 subscribers, I believe. I think we're at like 460, I want to say 450 maybe. As of the time of this recording, 468, closing in on 470, and then trying to get to 500, folks. Let's try to get to 500 by the end of summer. That would be awesome. So subscribe to the channel, as well as being a friend, telling a friend about us and all of the content that we are having here on the channel as we cover, all things Canadian football. So let's get into the fourth quarter. Let's kind of try to close this thing out on a 45-minute basis or so, about 21 minutes. As I can feel it. Doing this alone, I'm talking so much and talking so consistently, my throat starts to dry up and start to maybe get some voice cracks and start to just it's a little bit start to want to cough a little bit too. And I mistakenly didn't bring any water into the room here tonight. So let's get into the fourth quarter as we start with Mr. Automatic continuing to get the lines on the board, looking to be enough for the BC Lions. Getting the lead up to, I believe at that time would have been with another field goal for Sean White, would have made it to 23 to 13 for the BC Lions. And at this point, it's looking like it's going to be a shootout, which had been Glenn Suter had been kind of laying into that narrative throughout the game of, it looks like this is going to be a game that whoever has the ball last. And honestly, it did kind of turn out to be that way, with Hamilton having the ball pretty much last with, I believe, about 13 seconds left. They turned the ball over to BC to try to give them an opportunity to maybe win the game. But at that point, it's pretty much curtains unless you're the Edmonton Elks. But the BC Lions are looking like they have things that, for the most part under control, especially after this play in the fourth quarter, where it was Ronald Kent Jr. who forces the fumble on Greg Bell. Greg Bell, burst through the line of scrimmage. Looks like he's going to pick up the first down for the Hamilton Tiger Cats, get a pretty good production on first down, and Ronald Kent is able to strip the ball from him, and I believe it was Siona Tem was able to jump on it. BC was able to recover it, and almost you see how things went. Flip the script for BC, and an almost TSN turning point for it to go in their direction in their favor for the rest of the game. At that point, BC is able to go down the field, turn in that turnover into points. BC finishes the game with, I believe, 17 points off of turnover. And it started off with a beautiful football to Aiden Eberhardt down the seam, once again by Nathan Rourke, who had been trying to take advantage of that throughout the game. The big play to Keon Hatcher, another big play to Aiden Eberhardt. Fabulous route, timing, chemistry. Nathan let it go, knew exactly where Aiden Eberhardt was going to be, trusted exactly where Aiden Eberhardt was going to be. He runs onto the ball perfectly, and is another one that Aiden, we got to crib that, buddy. Fortunately for Aiden, it turns out to be a touchdown for Jeremiah Masoli. He comes in and punches it in short yardage, on short yardage. But that is one where Aiden Eberhardt definitely wants back and would love to find a way to get that ball over the goal line. I believe he gets tracked down at maybe the 2 or 3 yard line, could have even been the 1 yard line, as Jeremiah Masoli comes in the very next play and punches it in the short yardage package. BC from that point on up 10 points. At that point it was actually 33-23. Excuse me, folks. A little bit of misspoke there earlier. I think I said 23-13 at that point. It was high game, I believe, at that point. When or BC was up, actually, excuse me. They had just kicked that field goal to be up 26-23. They get the fumble. They get the Missouri touchdown, 33-23, 10-point lead with 4 minutes to go, and look to be in control of the football game. Now, obviously, folks, I have experience being in this situation of understanding that the CFL is a never leave the game early type of game, never count out the opposing team type of game, because you can make it up. You can make up a 10-point lead, a 14-point deficit, excuse me, 14-point deficit in the CFL with, under even 2 minutes time. The play clock stops under 3 minutes after every play, right? No matter if they get out of bounds, allowing the team to get organized a little bit, get to the line, ref blows it in, then the time starts to go. You only lose, maybe 7 or 8 seconds per play, opposed to 40 seconds maybe in the NFL, something like that. So you're able to stay alive in those situations. So you never want to say, oh, the Lions have things in the bank with 10 minutes to go, with 4 minutes to go with a 10-point lead. But if you're the BC Lions, absolutely unacceptable that they're unable to close things out there late with a 10-point lead. And just the way things that were, the offense had put them in a position to, it's not a dire situation of, like it was in the last possession there of, field goal ties it, touchdown wins it. It was a 2-possession game where, let's get a stop here. Let's maybe put a blanket over the fire, put a little bit of, positivity back into our offensive hands of, they don't have to go out there and, get a score or even get. I know in that situation they wanted to get a first down because then that would close it out, but not even panic if they were to say go 2-0 because they were still up 10, they were up 7, whatever it may be. When they go into that situation and it's that close to a ball game, I feel like it's as soon as it was 33-30, it was like, oh man, here we go again. And I said I would chat about it because we will. The 2 penalties that definitely would love to see them go in the Lions' favor. But that being said, it's still nothing to say that the Lions were robbed. I would never go even close to far as saying the Lions were robbed because they had a 10-point lead. That's an unacceptable game to lose that situation of being able to. You have to close that out. That is, as I think Row Report has chimed in a little bit on Twitter. BC Lions coverage on Twitter. BC Lions fan account, excuse me, I don't know what I'm trying to get out of my mouth here. Mentioned that that's arguably like a fireable offense for Mike Benavides that I questioned even why of obviously being positive coming in the season. Why the retread? Why not only the CFL retread of Mike Benavides, but the BC Lions retread of we've seen this guy as defensive coordinator not only once, twice, head coach of the BC Lions already, and it didn't work. And they bring him in once again, and I get it. I thought Ryan Phillips was scapegoated last year. And instead of getting rid of players and trying to go in different directions, they pretty much ran it back. And I know that this is maybe where I'll have the conversation now that, friend of mine, friend of the podcast, maybe hopefully he's listening, Shane. And I quite respect Shane's football opinion and knowledge. I believe and know that he knows what he's talking about. This was something that I disagreed with him and something that I really actually enjoyed with about Shane, that we can disagree about things and have that relationship and debate and bring people different views and stuff like that. But Shane, views that, and he is right in some ways, right? That the Matthew Betts contract is going in the wrong direction for the BC Lions, where I don't think it's maybe going in the wrong direction. I would say that definitely we want to see more from him, but I just think there's a lot of layers and context to the conversation with, I believe Matthew Betts is not playing at 100%. When you peel back things, the sack numbers dating back even last season were down last season. They're down this season. Matthew Betts is top 5 in sacks, or where's top 5 in sacks going into the week. Now, that being said, obviously you're paying him as the number 1 pass rusher in the league, so you're not paying him to be top 5. You're paying him to be the best. But that being said, he is one big game from being back within top 3, etc. He is and has the most pressures across the CFL coming in this week with 26. That was coming into this game with all the other teams already having played. He had 26 pressures coming into the game, so he's getting there. For me, it's not only that the BC Lions lack of pass rush and the quarterback doesn't even have anybody breathing on them. There's not even a resemblance of a pass rush. There's not even pressure most of the time. There's no, and I said it. Who's going to be Robin to Batman that is Matthew Betts? Is it going to be Sione Tiama, who continues to be the Mr. What's his best quality? It's his best consistency is inconsistency. Sione Tiama, if we're being quite frank. He shows up for a play or two and takes off a quarter or two. Kemeka Turay, first year in the CFL, whatever you want to, give him a break, this, that, and the third. He seems to be his best consistency is inconsistency as well. Started the season out solid, gets the suspension, been pretty quiet ever since. Whatever, effects you want to, chalk that up to, so be it. Who else? Because the D tackles, yeah, as much as I would love to, see them from a pass rushing standpoint, that's not their forte. Their forte is to, help keep those linebackers clean. Can they get some pressure every once in a while? Absolutely. And Jordan Tabai was, quite frankly, early on in the season. Dwayne Hendricks even a little bit. Dwayne Hendricks is far often the guy that's getting pressure in the middle of the defense right now, in the defensive line, which is embarrassing if you're the guys coming off the edge outside of Matthew Betts, who, as I said, leads the CFL in pressures coming into this game. So for me, it's been the question that I've asked 4 weeks. You can go find the videos. As I said, subscribe to the channel, press the notification bell. You guys get a reminder every time we upload a video. Go back into the Canadian Football Fanatics YouTube. Go to our YouTube Shorts. I'll bring it up. It's in there somewhere. Yeah, it's in there somewhere. As I mentioned, I think that's more the issue than, Matthew Betts is going to get a lot of the blame, and that's comes with the territory. You sign a contract like that, be ready for it. I hope he is. I hope he's motivated. I hope he's listening to the outside critics, outside narrative. He should have a chip on his shoulder because, quite frankly, he does need to play better. He is playing fine, good, enough, but not game changer, right? And for that money, that's what you need. So, maybe we do need Matthew Betts to be playing a little bit better. And as I said, it's just a little bit of a layered conversation with a little bit more context to be had in that standpoint. So, what do you want to look at next, I guess? The secondary, which ties into that conversation of the lack of pass rush and quarterbacks just sitting back in the pocket with nobody around them being able to go through their reads. And when in the secondary, we talked about it last year multiple times that, I was saying it on a almost weekly basis of it feels like the Lions secondary is 1 or 2 steps behind the play on every turn, at every turn. And it feels the same way this year. And this game was incredibly tough to watch in terms of receivers running open by 4 or 5 yards and having that separation of nobody being around them, being wide open, sitting in zone defense. Now, whatever you want to say, I know a lot of people were calling for, let's just blitz. Let's die on that hill of, sending the heat to a guy like Bo Levi Mitchell and living with the result. As much as I do subscribe to that, I would think that Kenny Lawler probably would have went for a bajillion yards and I don't know how many catches. So I would have not wanted to figure out if that was the game plan. That being said, it was death by a thousand paper cuts. So I've chatted for um, I guess you could say long enough, and I do have a little bit more to get off my chest, but I do see my man has joined me, so I would care to see what his thoughts are as he had to unfortunately suffer from his season ticket seats there in BC Place. So let's get him in here right now as I'm joined by my co-host, Blake. No, Blake, how we doing, buddy?
Um, I'm speechless, but at the same time, like I have a lot to say, Cole. Like that was I mean, I see you've been on here for 40 minutes already, so I'm sure you've gotten a lot of it covered, but the main thing I want to say is that's completely unacceptable. Like to have a 10-point lead with because I know for a fact I tweeted it from our show X account to have a 10-point lead with 3 minutes and 53 seconds left and to not get it over the finish line. It just it can't happen. Like the Lions record is 3-5 right now, and I hate to say it, but it's probably deserved. Like especially with the way the defense has played for the majority of this season, they probably deserve to be 3-5 and a borderline playoff team, which is exactly what they are right now.
Yeah, I referred to it a couple times here tonight, Blake, that I said that I referred to it on the weekly show, but I referred to it again tonight of like this is I feel like who the Lions are this year. They take one or two steps forward and they take three or four steps back, unfortunately, this year. You know, they put together maybe a win or two here and they put together three or four losses here. And I just think it's unfortunate because they do flush a lot of decent football here tonight, right? I think that I've said it a couple times before you joined us here, Blake, of like unfortunately for the Lions, this is probably a much different post-game report tonight if they're able to win things, right? And that's the kind of the gift and the curse of falling apart tonight, right? Where things would have been a lot different if you were able to pull out the victory, but you weren't. And this is where now those holes that we were maybe able to gloss over or cover up now or magnified that much more in a loss here tonight. So as I said, Blake, we've been already 40 minutes, buddy, but I'm curious about honestly your thoughts as you were there in person. I pretty much just got through the game recap. I got into the fourth quarter, was just chatting a little bit about I know some fans, I believe it was BC Lions Den, their account was tweeting about the defensive scheme as a whole, and I was kind of basically my conversation was getting to Mike Benavides basically being not only a BC Lions retread but a CFL retread now, right? Of
Mhm.
a guy we've seen and his scheme already not work. People were kind of a little bit frustrated, which I give them full credit to be frustrated tonight after a loss like this. We're frustrated in the scheme and the approach that I think that the Lions had tonight of, you know, not getting pressure. And I was just talking about like, yes, the defensive line needs to get pressure, but the lack of like sending pressure via the linebackers and like blitzing, and they were playing a lot of coverage. And I think as you texted me right of your number one key I believe was to limit a guy like Kenny Lawler, and I think in doing so, you probably had to sacrifice sending those extra bodies, right? If they did
Yeah.
send those extra bodies, as I was just saying before you joined me, and they were in those cover zero looks, I would imagine Kenny Lawler finishes his game with a much different stat line than he did finish, right? Where, as I said before you just joined me, he probably finishes with a bajillion yards and three or four touchdowns again, because we're kind of living and dying in that situation where Glenn Suter mentioned it multiple times throughout the broadcast that they were playing pretty much this umbrella coverage to take away all the deep shots that Kenny Lawler was doing to everybody across the CFL, right? Where they pretty much they traded getting beat deep for the death by a thousand paper cuts. Keandre Smith, I believe, finished with 14 receptions for 130 yards or something like that. Love to
Two
see it from
touchdowns.
a
I know the stats exactly. Not to cut you off there, Cole, but because I heard it on the drive home, Julio and Moj, their quick little 15-20 minute post game. I heard the very end of it. Keandre Smith was 14 catches for on 15 targets. So when he was thrown to, he did not catch the ball once this game, just one time for I believe it was 124 yards in total and two touchdowns, including the game winning touchdown with 20 seconds left.
yeah. So love to see it from a Canadian standpoint, as he is a Guelph University alumni. So a U Sports product. Had quite the confidence with Farhan post game as he was interviewed on TSN, and Farhan just kind of asked him, as a Canadian receiver, how has it been to kind of like see the talent across the CFL as well as yourself go off? And he kind of just simply said that I'm the best Canadian receiver in the CFL right now. So I love that confidence from himself. I don't necessarily know if I agree with him, but
I was gonna say I don't
um,
know if I agree, but hey, whatever floats your boat. Like you just won the game, so talk however you want.
shoot your shot, DeAndre Smith. So as I said, I love to see it from a Canadian standpoint, as we are the Canadian football fanatics, Blake. But um, was ultimately, I feel like the game plan tonight was clearly take away Kenny Lawler and make anybody beat you underneath. And DeAndre Smith basically put his hand up and said, "I'll beat you underneath." 14 receptions, as Blake said, on 15 targets. Whenever the ball was thrown his way, he was able to be very effective in that matter. Um, Basically, Blake, as I was kind of unfortunately getting to here to the end of like the positivity that we were probably going to be able to chat about the offense gets wiped away after this due to the fact that we're going to be basically spending our time on the defense. So basically, I'm going to send things back to you to maybe get your thoughts a little bit on the defensive perspective. As I was saying, from the defensive line, from me, I know Shane was chatting about, and I'm going to unfortunately repeat myself, folks, just for those that maybe were listening, just wanting to fill Blake in here a little bit of like, you know, Shane was critical, right, and rightfully so. I did say that like he does have, I do agree with him on some standpoints of the Matthew Betts criticism, but I'm not too sure if you did see uh
Our
Kowalski
boy
tweeted out,
Nick Kowalski's tweet, yeah, I saw it.
yeah, of Matthew Betts does have the most pressures across the CFL going into this game. I think, and I've said it. I told the people, go back and check out our YouTube Shorts tab here on the YouTube channel. I have a little YouTube short clip of me talking back, and I don't know what week it was, the post game report of who is going to be that Robin to Batman that is Matthew Betts. Who is going to step up across from him and be able to generate that pressure on a weekly basis? And it isn't Sione Tema right now. His best
Mhm.
consistency is inconsistency, because that is kind of who he has been throughout his BC Lions career. Is he shows up for a game or two, and then he disappears for 5 or 6. Kemeka Ture put together a few decent games to start the season. He was, I think, 2 sacks in 3 games. He
And then
gets
he got
suspended,
himself suspended.
and now he's been pretty quiet from the last 2 games after his suspension in Edmonton, and then this past week. So there hasn't really been that Robin. So as I said, I think the conversation around Matthew Betts is a layered one. Would I love to see him do better? Absolutely, especially with his price tag. It kind of it warrants that for the BC Lions. With that being said, he is playing fine right now. He is not playing. He's not bumming it up by any means right now. He's getting to the quarterback. The quarterbacks that we're playing, unfortunately, get the ball out incredibly fast. When you look at the last few weeks of Zach Collaros, Trevor Harris, McLeod Bethel Thompson, McLeod Thompson, excuse me, and then this week with Believer Mitchell. He's getting there. He's unfortunately not able to finish, and he does need to finish for the BC Lions to do better. And that's something that definitely is unfortunate. But the lack of pass rush, man, it's hurting the secondary as well. Of like opposing quarterbacks are sitting in the pocket with nobody around them. And the secondary, I know we had this conversation last year, like multiple times. Of like, it feels like the DBs are like 3 and 4 yards behind the
Mhm.
receiver on multiple times of
Yeah,
not
that
being
was
able to make a play. Yeah,
sorry to
so
cut you
Blake,
off
no,
again.
Blake, I'm a little bit long-winded. I just wanted to pass it back to you to kind of go off here on like your thoughts from a defensive perspective. So like, I'm gonna give it to you, buddy. You just I'll throw it in the private chat, I guess, here quickly, and just give me your thoughts from like a defensive perspective, from like the defensive line, the secondary, and then even like the linebackers of like Micah Alway and Josh Woods and Ben Hladick as well.
Yeah, for sure, Cole. I know we weren't able to have a post game show last week because I was at the game, of course, and you were at previous commitments. But it was like that. Um, that's what my biggest um, worry, frustration was. Is probably the perfect word. My frustration was from last week's game, like especially in the second half, the Saskatchewan Roughriders. time and time again looked like they just had 12-yard outs for first downs. And the Lions DBs, and we talked about it during the weekly show as well. The Lions DBs were 5 yards away. And again, that happened tonight. The Tiger Cats disguised it a little bit better because the Saskatchewan Roughriders literally threw a 12-yard out just to the right of the sticks. They make the catch. It would be a first down. They'd step out of bounds. But this week, the Tiger Cats were able to use the middle of the field a bit better, and they just I, like that. That's a perfect explanation for it. Cole is death by a thousand paper cuts because the Lions defense as a whole, I think, did their job for the most part. Like they were able to hold, um, limit Bo Levi Mitchell as best as possible for a majority of the game. I mean, I know that they were only able to force one punt during the football game, but they did their job. Like for the most part, they were holding the Hamilton Tiger Cats to field goals. um, they had the lead 10 points with 3 minutes left. But you and I, and the saying, I guess you will, that comes to my mind, you and I have been around Canadian football long enough. You played junior football with, of course, the Canadian rules. I've been a support staff. Um, it's like the biggest saying you and I hear is in Canadian football, it's 57 plus 3. And the Lions were the better team for 57 minutes. And then in that plus 3, they just completely fell apart defensively, offensively. And I know we're talking about the defense here for a moment, but I just want to mention the offense again. Um, that my second key that I had was complementary football. And again, in that 57 minutes, the Lions played great complementary football. The defense had 3 turnovers. Every single turnover led to points for the offense. 17 points overall, 2 touchdowns, and a field goal. But in that final 3 minutes, the Lions gave up a big play. Yeah, that can happen defensively, but then the offense gets the ball back and they don't get a first down. And I get that Nathan Rourke was upset. I was, of course, in the building. It was 100% offsides on that 2nd and 8 play when the Lions had the ball. But as Nathan kind of said in his post game interview, yeah, it was offside, but the referees are humans. They make mistakes. Like you have to play through that. And I would argue that the play on Kenny Lawler, the final play of the third quarter, was more egregious, potentially pass interference, than that offside was. As an offense, you have to be able to get at least one, maybe two first downs, kill a minute 30, 2 minutes off the clock. If you leave the Hamilton Tiger Cats a minute or less on the clock, I don't think there's any way they go on the drive they did. At best, they kick a field goal and you take your chances in overtime.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, buddy, that they absolutely just need to not put it in the referee's hands in that situation, right? Where they pick up that first down, where Nathan mentioned on his post game of media availability, right? Of like he knew that, or in his mind, he thought that he had the free play, so he wanted to get the ball out quick to James Butler. He said in being able to go back and watch the play, Justin McInnis was wide open. If he was able to maybe slow down his process a little bit, was able to get the ball to McInnis instead, and wanted to go to James Butler, who wasn't really open, and I think that's why the ball came out high. Um, they punt the ball back, and look at the situation they're in. Is the lack of complementary football like you were asking for? But as you said, they were able to do it for pretty much 57 minutes. Of the 3 turnovers, 17 points off those turnovers were effective. And unfortunately, as I said, I'm well aware of a CFL game is never over till it's over. So never leave a game until it's over. But um, tonight, I think, Blake. Actually, I guess my one last point before we kind of close things out is kind of the other penalty situation that I know after the game, or I guess I should say maybe during the game, I was quite frustrated in it and it was called accidental pass interference on Ben Hladek, but a very I guess the best way to put it is like a very soft call, if we're being quite honest, and that gives them a fresh set of downs, kind of almost on eliminating any chance of a goal line stand in that situation of basically rewarding them first fresh set of downs as they've mentioned, and
Yeah,
lights out from that point on.
they moved the ball up a yard. I do agree with you a little bit, Cole. I mean, if that flag isn't thrown at 2nd and 2, you don't know the play call. Like maybe they try a pass again. Maybe they go to Greg Bell. Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe the Lions do get a stop and force a field goal, and again, you're taking your chances in overtime. But by the way of the rule, I think that has to be called. And I get what you're saying, that it's not a fun call. It's not one that, especially in that scenario, you want called. But the feet got tangled up. Like I know Haladic had no intention whatsoever. He's looking at the ball. He's doing everything a linebacker should do. But that's why they have the difference: accidental pass interference versus blatant pass interference, if you want to call it that. The feet got tangled up 100%. I think by the rule book, that's going to get called every single time.
Yep, that's fair, buddy. I appreciate that side of things as well. So, um, you know, where do we go from here? As I've said multiple times, this would have been a much different conversation. This would have been a much different, you know, bye week, if we're being quite
Yeah,
frank. Right now, the Lions go into a bye week, and as maybe we look back on week number 8, as I can't believe we are 2 months into the freaking season already, man.
I
As
know.
time is flying by. Winnipeg loses this past week, and you think, oh
So
man,
there's still,
what
we're talking about how bad the Lions are, but like technically they're still tied for third in points. I know the Bombers have had 2 buys already. The Lions haven't had any. But let's not forget, Zach Claros left last week's game with an injury. Rumor had it, um, after he left yesterday's game at halftime, he might not have even, he maybe shouldn't have even played in that game yesterday. So if this injury is kind of as serious as rumblings are, he might be out for a while. And um, I've talked about it before, but I have no faith in Chris Streveler. So at the very least, third place in the division maybe is up for grabs. Like, I don't know.
Blake, this is where we go from here is probably the interesting one, where you have that thought process. My thought process, quite frankly, is that obviously the loss of Zach Claros is going to be one to keep an eye on in terms of that third place battle. That I kind of believe that's pretty easy to say that Saskatchewan and Calgary are going to battle for first and second as of now. With obviously it is in Labor Day, right? So crazy things happen after Labor
VA
Day,
got hurt last week.
and
Early reports are that his injury isn't as serious as originally thought, and he might not. He might even play on Thursday, but he did get
for
injured. So
for our friends in Saskatchewan, let's maybe knock on wood, but we know that they like to maybe not do as well after Labor Day. So like I said, it is still, as we are saying, it is the season is flying by. We are still early into things, and things are going to happen, things are going to change, teams are going to go on runs, etc. But I think as of now, it's pretty fair to say that Calgary and Saskatchewan appear to be in kind of the top of the West right now, and then it's Winnipeg and BC kind of trying to figure things out. As we look at the standings right now, Blake, and Saskatchewan's sitting atop things, 6-1, Calgary at 5-2. You look at BC, who had the opportunity with Winnipeg at 3-3 to go to 4, and would have been 4-4, would have jumped Winnipeg. Now they get to 3-5 after the loss. And another one, Keandre Smith was very vocal afterwards, with obviously rightfully so. The TSN camera was following him around on the bench after he scored the game-winning touchdown. He was very quick to mention that he thinks that I forget how he worded it, but he was alluding to that the fact that people think the East is weak, and that he said, I believe, F that shit, the East being weak, the West is weak, or something like that. And my thought press, to be honest, Blake, is that if BC were to finish fourth and they go the crossover route, I'm not mad in that situation, especially with Montreal and my faith with Montreal this year of like them being.
I
I
know,
love
but the only
what
reason that gives me a bit of pause, Cole, is that I, I I'll let you finish here in a moment. I think I know where you're going with this, but a crossover team has never won the Grey Cup. But anyways,
What
as I said, I'll
what
let you finish.
history what history we could be on, Blake? What a storyline that could be. Um, as I'm a little bit facetious on that part. I don't know if the ceiling for this team is ultimately a Grey Cup, if we're being honest, with how we've seen this
Yeah.
team through 8 weeks. It's just the facts at this point, right? It'd be a little bit different if it was 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It's been this team hasn't had a bye week, so we've seen 8 games. This team has a pretty substantial sample size of, as I said, they take one step forward, they win the season opener versus Edmonton, they take 3 steps back. They win a couple of games with Rourke, they take a couple steps back here. So I think this is who this team is this year. So my thought process is why the heck deal with going into whether it be Winnipeg or Saskatchewan or Calgary right now of whoever finishes second. I'd probably rather go into obviously Hamilton just beat us, but Hamilton was 4 points away from ultimately losing to us today. So
Mhm.
Hamilton doesn't scare me too much. Montreal, I think with the Davis Alexander that's healthy does give me some pause of like I think they are still a good team, but they've been almost up and down this year, right? Like where they've been,
Yep.
we haven't really like been able to see like Montreal at their best. Tyson, right? Like we're also high on Tyson, but if we're being honest, like Tyson is starting to kind of been not being able to stay on the field too, right? When he's a huge part of them being able to have success offensively. When he's on the field, that means Austin Mack's better. That means multiple guys in there. We're looking at like guys like Cole Speaker, right? Who Cole Speaker's having to step up. He's having these moments, right, where he's making big plays, but he's also dropping big, he's having, unfortunate downsides in big moments too, where he's had a couple of drops on big plays. So Montreal kind of hasn't been that team defensively. Maybe Montreal has been that team where they've been pretty dominant on the side of the ball, but offensively, right, without Davis kind of being under center, they've been up and down. So, outside of that, Toronto, obviously Toronto has with Chad Kelly maybe going to the sixth game, he could obviously be brought back at a certain point, so maybe not on there for
Yeah,
this
what a
full length
weird
of time.
situation that is.
Uh, I'm sure we'll talk about it Wednesday night. We'll also talk about the Ottawa Redblacks, and I mean, I don't think even Shane's scared of the Ottawa Redblacks right now. So that's personally my thought process, Blake, and I hear you for sure that no team's ever won the Grey Cup. I don't think that's unfortunately my expectations right now, but I think for them to get to an East final opposed to a West final, I think them going through say a Toronto or a Hamilton, whoever it may be in that second seed in the East, is maybe the more easier path as of now. As Keandre
Mhm.
Smith doesn't think so. As I'm saying about the we don't know about after Labor Day. Maybe after Labor Day, the Eastern Division heats up, right? With maybe guys like Davis Alexander, Chad Kelly coming back, right? And those teams start to hang with Tiger Cats sooner or later. We're gonna have to start giving them a little bit of credit, right? Like they are winning games at the end of the day. Where I think a
Five
lot
in
of
a
people,
row now.
yeah, 5 in a row, hottest team in the CFL. So it's going to be interesting to see the Lions go into a bye week, and I think it's time to look in the mirror. If you're the BC Lions, it's time for questions to be had, and I think I don't know if it was Raw Report or not of like had to be a fireable offense for a guy like Mike Benavides. I don't think that's going to be questions. I don't think that
Especially
question is
not
going.
the he is, and I know as you said about 15 minutes ago, he's a retread for the BC Lions and the CFL. But this is his first year as the DC
And they
back,
wouldn't.
so I don't think that's
Yeah.
gonna happen.
With Ryan Phillips in the wing, he would be obviously the guy that would be the interim. I don't think that would just look so silly of the guy that you
Yeah, but they
just
demoted
basically
him
did.
last year.
That's what I mean. It would be basically like you guys would have it would be like egg on your face of like why the hell did you put yourself in the situation in the first place? Like you didn't need to. So
Yeah,
I don't think that's a conversation. Although I think it's right. Like it's at come January and February. I absolutely agree that I don't think it's going to be happening because as Blake just said, it's the first year of Mike Benavides. But this scheme clearly doesn't work because we've seen it last year of the DBs behind receivers by 4 or 5 yards, the lack of pass rush, and whether you want to say it's the player's fault. I'm here for that conversation too. I just think it needs to be it's a almost a complete rebuild defensively next year of new faces, new schemes. Turn that whole side of the ball over and let's try to maybe restart, reload on the fly here. But Blake, we've been about an hour five, buddy. Is there any final thoughts here before we kind of close things out for the rest of the show?
No, I think I think I was able to get what I wanted off my chest in those 25 minutes or so. It's just yeah, as I said when I hopped on, like it's unacceptable. That's what it is, and I hope the Lions. No, let me put it differently. I know that the Lions know that too. Like, that loss, they're 1-3 at home now too, and like the attendance was actually pretty good. Up until this game, they never announced today's attendance. I've noticed that a lot more recently. They very rarely do unless it's the home opener when they actually sell out. It was probably somewhere around like 18, 19,000. There was a lot of, at least what I noticed, a lot of empty seats in the lower bowl. Of course, with the lower bowl being open. But like you and I have talked about this before, Vancouver sports is a fickle market. When you win, people will show up. If you don't win, there's a lot of other things for people to do, and they will lose you. Like they will not care anymore. So the Lions have to turn that around in their final five home games. And yeah, it's just that can't happen. Like giving up that touchdown in a minute, that deep shot can't happen. I would much rather the Lions gave up a 5 or a 10 yard play, give the Tiger Cats the first down, wane the clock down a little bit more. That's the first touchdown I'm talking about in the final 3 minutes. And then the offense, they're not without fault either. Like you have to be able, you want to be one of the best offenses in the league. Nathan Rourke, you and I could talk or defend him if you will till we're blue in the face. You want to be the best quarterback? Prove it. James Butler, you want to be the best back? Prove it. Get a couple first downs, ice that game, and we don't have to talk about the defense as much as we are.
Freaking right, Blake. That was well said, buddy. All really well said. But to close things out here, folks, slowly look at the next, 6 weeks for the BC Lions. They're going to get into this bye week here, so probably well timed as they are, I believe, the last team to go into bye week. So,
They
like I
are,
said,
yeah.
would have been nice to go into the bye week with a win and feel a little bit better about yourselves. But I hope they're real pissed off the next 10 or so days, whatever it is, till they play again. Look themselves deep in the mirror because coming out of the bye week, a bunch of winnable games coming up in hand here. Like they obviously have the home bye and home with Hamilton, so they go to Hamilton now. They host Montreal, which that'll be a game I'll be back in BC Place finally. It feels like it's been forever for myself because it's been since June.
Without, most likely without Davis Alexander
Without
because
Davis
he's on the
Alexander.
sixth game.
So another winnable game at home where they need to course correct things. As you said, 1-3 at home. They need to start defending their home turf. You look at after Montreal, they go to Toronto. I know that's been a tough one for the BC Lions, I believe, over the years. Correct, Blake? Is the Toronto trip
Yeah,
or yeah. So tough one. That being said, with the news that we just got of Chad Kelly's on the sixth game, he would still be currently on the sixth game after
he
that game.
would. Yeah,
So who knows what their quarterback situation will be like then. And then we have a home and home with Ottawa, which big shout out to Shane, but 2 wins right there chalked up. No, I'm just kidding. Completely kidding with how the Lions are playing. But when you look at that stretch, we need to figure out who this freaking Lions team is. Go
at
go on a run now.
worst, at
Go
worst, Cole, I think you have
yeah,
to go 5-1 in that stretch.
yes. They have to go on a run. And that's the run that okay, going into Labor Day, the BC Lions are the hottest team in the CFL. And that is the position you want to be in. Is going into September, you're the hottest team around. Nobody wants to play you going into October, November, and that's when you want to get on a run. So the Lions have a big time opportunity in front of themselves here. So that's why I said it's real gut check time here of like looking yourselves in the mirror. What team do you guys want to be? Because they have ultimately been in some games this year. They have lost some games that they've got shit kicked as well, but games that they could have been rightfully 500 right now, right?
Yep,
With things ahead of them, sitting in third place and being within striking distance of both Calgary and Saskatchewan, especially with already losing those season series to Winnipeg and Saskatchewan. So they have everything in front of them, especially with the big Eastern heavy slate here coming up. So it'll be interesting to see how the BC Lions respond. So Blake, before we get out of here, buddy, I wanted to quickly remind the folks as well as maybe update yourself. I just let the people know, just due to our schedule and my partnership with the BCFC, that we are going to scrap the BC Lions previews for the rest of the season until the end of the BCFC season. And we'll probably bring them back to the end of the season
So
and
that's
whatnot.
well, the BCFC. So that's realistically that'll probably be, and there will
Yeah,
be no more preview shows. Let's put it that way, because once you get into Canadian Bowl and stuff like that, maybe playoffs,
yeah. It'd be
CFL
like maybe a
version.
West. It'd be like maybe a West final.
Yeah, exactly. But other than that, there will be no more preview shows.
Yeah, because as I mentioned already, myself in the, just I'm being compensated by the league, so having just to
Yeah, of course, yeah.
spend more time there, unfortunately, right? So, wanting to make sure I'm as prepared as
Who won
possible.
the West Shore Valley game today?
West Shore did. West Shore beat him quite handily, Blake. Actually, I was quite surprised. Actually, I had both games
Took
on
the
throughout.
opening kickoff for a touchdown. I saw that.
They did, yeah. And there was actually a big injury actually for Valley player. So
Oh,
actually shout out to him. Thoughts and prayers. Pretty lengthy delay. Blake. They had to get 2 ambulances on the field to get
oh.
him off and stuff. So hopefully nothing uh too scary. And wishing that player the best. But as I said, Blake, just wanting to make sure I'm covering my bases with the BCFC, as well as I mentioned to the boys on the weekly show on Wednesday night. I am officially the color analyst for the Vancouver Island Raiders this year. That was also
Yes,
something that
sir.
the BCFC asked as well. So that's going to be an exciting thing for me as well, to kind of pick up that side of things, something that I've never done. So looking forward to that. Just another kind of, I'm going to be at the football field talking football once again. So nothing really changes too much, to be honest. But there's going to be some content behind the scenes with that stuff as well that we're going to be on posting on the channel. So as I mentioned, subscribe and press the notification bell. You guys get notified every single time we upload some stuff like that. But other than that, Blake, lastly on the BCFC, unfortunately for Blake, he has the bragging rights on me for now, as it was a tough week 2 for the Vancouver Island Raiders. I don't know if you saw the final score or
I
not, Blake, last
did.
night.
I did.
I had 39-point buffer for my Vancouver Island Raiders, as I actually have to watch what I'm saying, as I have to try to remain as neutral as possible. But as an alumni, I sometimes slip up, but I was bugging Blake that I didn't think the Raiders were going to lose by 39 points, and lo and behold, they lose by 42 to the Okanagan Suns. So, unfortunately, bragging rights between Blake and I will have to wait for that matchup for Langley and VI. I don't know actually when that is, but actually, Blake, we'll talk about it
It's
actually behind
fairly
the scenes.
soon, I think. But
Remind me, buddy, after we press end of this, I'm going to chat with you about something else. But
yeah,
other
yeah.
than that, guys, that has been week number 8 post game report for Blake and myself. You guys can follow us on our social media platforms, as you guys can see them down below. We are on Twitter @_CF Fanatics. We are on Instagram @Canadian Football Fanatics. And of course, if you guys enjoyed tonight's episode, please be sure to leave a like on the video, comment down below, let you guys know how you're feeling going into the bye, as the BC Lions sit at 3-5 and 4th place in the Western Division in the CFL. Of course, if you guys subscribe to the channel, when you guys subscribe, press the notification bell, you guys, so you guys get notified every single time we go live or upload a video on the channel. 2 months into the season, I can't believe it, Blake. As it is going to be next time we talk, buddy. It's going to be August. I can't believe
Not
that.
quite. The weekly show will still be July, but close
Right,
enough.
right. That is correct. That is correct. So it'll be, I believe, last few days of July next time we chat. Last reminder for anybody that is a CFL fan or a BC Lions fan, come join in all the fun on Wednesday night, as Blake, Coach Shane, and myself talking all things CFL on a weekly basis every night. Wednesday night, 13th Man Sports YouTube channel at 6 o'clock Pacific time. That does it for another BC Lions post-game report, as the BC Lions fall 37-33 to the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.